Hello, Mastermind Gaming community, and welcome to the old school State of the Runescape Address, a weekly series going over the most recent changes happening in OSRS, along with potentially how they might impact the game in the future. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. This week's update didn't really have a whole ton of changes, but still changes nonetheless. The very first one we'll be looking at is the Volcanic Mine. The point cap in the Volcanic Mine has been raised from 65,535 to 2,097,151. So basically you're going to be able to mine for much longer now without having to run to the store to get rid of extra points. In addition, the interface in the Volcanic Mine waiting room will now count down at the start of the game, so you'll know exactly how long you'll have to wait before you can start playing. And the next one is probably one of the most significant changes for this week's updates, and that's going to be the changes to Avas Devices. Now Avas Attractor, Accumulator, and Assembler will no longer be lost on PVM deaths. They will, however, be lost on a PvP death, so you must watch out still for that. I think this is a great change because I've lost many of these Avas devices whenever you're killing bosses, and there's a lot of reasons that you'll just end up dying eventually, and losing those Avas devices is really annoying because one of those untradables that you will lose. A lot of the other untradables you will not normally lose, so it was just kind of inconsistent in that way. So I think it's really nice to see that now whenever you do die you won't be losing that, so you don't have to stockpile up on them as much. And I think overall that's a pretty good change for the Avas Attractor, Accumulator, or Assembler. And following last week's game update, they asked us for some feedback on Revenant Changes, the Vestas Longsword, and Blighted Items. They got some pretty good feedback on some of the things like Revenant Caves, but the Blighted Items and Vestas Longsword didn't get as much. They still got some feedback. The Blighted Items especially didn't get very much feedback, so they're really asking for feedback on those. So the Vestas Longsword, they received a lot of feedback regarding it, and they're still discussing the next steps. They're not going to make any changes without consulting the player base though, and they're just kind of working out the best approach right now. And then once they're actually able to figure out a good solution, that's when they're going to be able to have that conversation with us as players to kind of vote and see what kind of changes need to be made for it. And also the Blighted Items, they didn't get much feedback on this either, most likely because the Revenant Caves have been kind of taking over the news lately with what kind of changes need to be made to them. However, basically they're wanting to be able to add Blighted Items into PvP worlds so you can be able to use them. I don't really PvP too much, so I don't really know how that would impact the PvP community and how that might change the meta up a little bit. I think it could be interesting, but who really knows. If you guys have any kind of input on this, make sure you leave it down in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear from a PvPer or someone who does PvP somewhat consistently to see what kind of impact that it might have on the actual PvP community at large. And one of the biggest updates that came out of this is basically the support for the Revenant Cave plans. Basically, they're going to be looking at spreading the Revenant spawns more thinly throughout the caves, reduce the value of their drop table, and replace the multi-way combat system with a new mechanic that we've coined Singles Plus. It's single-way combat, but PvP combat will take priority over NPC combat. So what that means is if you're facing a monster down in the Revenant Caves, you can still be attacked by normal players. Normally, if you're in a singles combat area, you can just box something. It's a very common PvP tactic for skillers to be able to get out of the PvP fights. Basically, how a boxing works is you just unequip your weapons or anything, and then you just go up and punch a monster. And by punching the monster, you're not going to be able to hit very hard, and it's going to basically essentially not allow you to be attacked by the PvPer if you're in singles combat areas, because you're attacking the monster and the person can't actually attack you because of that. Now, Singles Plus is going to work in a way that even if you are attacking a monster, you will still be able to be attacked by one player. Not multiple players, but one player will be able to engage with you and basically pull you out of that fight against that NPC. I think this is a pretty interesting concept. However, I do think that it will take away a little bit, because whenever they originally decided to coin the whole Revenant Caves in the first place, the main reason they wanted it was to have a hotspot for multi-combat zones. Multi-combat zones are still kind of popular, just kind of depends on where you're at in the wilderness. However, they really wanted to have a hotspot that would really attract a lot of PVMers and a lot of PvPers into one central area and be able to have multi-combat kind of like clan wars and things. And I think they accomplished that in such a way, but the bad thing is that there's just gold farmers, people out there that are willing to kind of exploit it and not really make it about the game and make it kind of fun like it should be. So I think that Singles Plus might be the best alternative. However, it does kind of take away from the original idea of the Revenant Caves being a multi-combat hotspot in the wilderness. I think that'll be interesting to see how this kind of plays out, and yeah, we'll just have to see. If you guys have any kind of input on what you guys think about the Revenant Caves, make sure you let me know in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear from you and hear what you have to say about the Revenant Caves, and if you agree with these changes, and if you think there might be a better solution out there. And then kind of in other news, there's a couple of other small changes that they did. They updated the fishing skill guide. It's been expanded and reorganized to better show you the equipment and level players will need to catch fish. The lobster pod has been renamed to lobster cage. The lunar teleport tablets now have the same grand exchange buy limits as other teletabs, which is going to be 10,000. Iron players can now pick up the net in the Ogre Shaman Cave. The Wilderness Crabs teleport tablet has been updated to give the same warning as the other teletabs in the game. And the win counter at Last Man Standing now goes up to 32,767. Now, they've been getting a lot of feedback on the lobster pot change, and they thought it would be kind of a minor change. However, just to kind of avoid confusion whenever new players are kind of playing the game and learning how to fish. But a lot of the people were kind of giving feedback on it, and they just basically said when you chop down a tree, the axes aren't called tree choppers. So maybe they were just kind of relying on intuition, and it can be a good thing. And they just basically said they got it wrong, and they're going to be reverting that change now. So that was kind of the updates for this week. Like I said, it wasn't too major. They basically just kind of finalized up a couple of things from the last couple of weeks and got some feedback on some stuff. They're still wanting that feedback on those blighted items and that Vesta's longsword. And yeah, that's about it for this week's video. So if you guys like this kind of video update series and want to see more of them, make sure to let me know in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear from you guys. And make sure if you haven't already subscribed that you do subscribe, like the video. It helps out that YouTube algorithm quite a bit. And I'll see you guys in the next one.